Today we are in the kitchen and we are whipping up a recipe of my mom's granola. This is an easy recipe. It takes basic ingredients and it doesn't take you too long to whip up some good granola. Welcome to Ridgehaven Homestead. From the mountains of Upper East Tennessee, we share snippets of our off-grid life, cabin build, and garden blessings. Pour yourself a cup of tea, sit back, and take a peek into our off-grid home and family. Okay, for the granola, we are going to be using oatmeal. That's of course the base. I'm going to be doubling this recipe, and the recipe calls for 8 cups of oatmeal, so we're going to add 16. In case you're wondering if I was measuring, I was, but not with a measuring cup. My bowl actually happens to have markings for the different quarts, so I'm using 4 quarts. I've filled it up that far, so that is 16 cups. My mom's recipe also calls for a cup of wheat germ. As far as I can remember, she's never used the wheat germ, so we're skipping that. It calls for 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, so we're using 1.5. And since I am using the evaporated cane crystals, it's not very brown, so I'm going to be adding a little bit of molasses to mine to make it into brown sugar. So I'm going to need 1.5 cups. And then we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of molasses to turn this pale sugar into more of a brown sugar. Just give it that nice molasses flavor. This is baking molasses. You could use blackstrap, it's less refined, but I'm just using this baking molasses. As they say, it's slow as molasses. The next thing we want to add is, well, we're going to come back for the nuts. The next thing is a cup of chopped nuts, or 2 for us. We're going to go ahead and add the oil, 1/2 cup of oil, and I'm going to get a big spoon out for mixing this. When I mix my granola, I like to use a big long spoon. Okay, so this takes 1/2 cup of oil per 8 cups, so we're going to need a cup of oil. I'm going to be using sunflower oil. There are so many recipes for granola out there, but this is kind of the comforting one that I know very well. It's super easy to make, so it's one that my husband likes, and he's been longing for some granola, let me tell you. The recipe also calls for sesame seeds, which you can add if you want. I've never added sesame seeds. It would make a nice crunch. 1 cup of coconut, so doubling it, we're going to have 2 cups of coconut. And it looks like I have a little bit less than that, maybe. The good thing about granola is it's kind of customizable. You can add things later if you want, like your nuts, and I will be adding some dates to this one and raisins when it's done, so you can play around with it, get the basics in, and then you can add things as you like. Okay, so coconut, now we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt per recipe, so a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. Okay, now we are going to add 1/2 cup of water, or 1 cup of water, and 2 tablespoons of vanilla. That's all there is to it. And this vanilla that I use it says use 1/4 or 1/2 of what the recipe calls for, because it's like super concentrated, so I just put 1 tablespoon. Yeah, I need to put 2 in. I'll put 2 tablespoons in rather than doubling it. because it does give it a really nice flavor. Okay, I am going to chop up some nuts. I'm going to give this a good stir. You can, if you want, probably might mix things a little better if you put your oats in there and your dry ingredients, and then put the wet ingredients together, mix them up and add them, but you don't have to. It usually comes out pretty well. Now, the one thing that's different in what I'm doing compared to what I sometimes do is I'm using rolled oats. I prefer to use quick oats because I think that they do a good job, but the rolled oats work pretty well too. It's just going to be chewier. But I think if I had my preference, I would probably use quick oats. Now, the reason why you want to stir this pretty well is because you want to get your salt and your sugar mixed into everything so there's not clumpy bits of salt. I don't mind the clumpy bits of granola, but I just don't want them to be a mouthful of salt. Don't like that too well. Now we're going to be baking this in my vintage oven. The last time I attempted granola, it was a disaster because I turned it down and I walked away assuming that it would just do what it was supposed to, and it didn't. It got way too hot. So I'm going to be really babysitting this and keeping a close eye on it today. And the one thing that I have to do is I'm going to have to call somebody in, my son, so that we can light the pilots again. When it got so hot, it was like it was in the probably 85 or 86 degrees the other day, and it started getting so hot in here because we had the pilots lit. They do produce a decent amount of heat, and it goes straight upstairs into the boys' rooms, and so they were miserable. So when it was so hot, I blew the pilots out, and today we have a day that's like in the 60s. So I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to bake before it gets really hot again, because when it starts heating up in the summer, I don't like to use this because it makes it too hot, and that's why we have the countertop oven for those times. So if you use a vintage stove, you just have little nuances that you have to adapt to. Okay, this is pretty well mixed, but I do need my nuts in there. And I'm just going to put them in this bowl and use my handy chopper and chop them up a little bit. Okay, I like to use walnuts, but pecans are really good. Almonds can be really good, whatever you like. So I chop these kind of roughly. I like them kind of big, but not too big, because otherwise they won't distribute that well through the granola. I get this handy chopper from the Mennonite store close by, and for me it works really well for chopping nuts. I used to have the grinding kind, which I like pretty well, and then this, I don't know, it's low tech. There's like very little to wash. So I could use like a machine to do this, but then I'd have to wash it. And so I prefer a little bit lower tech, and it does it in not too much time. So I like to chop my nuts about like that. Okay, so we have them like this. We're going to give it a good stir, and then we'll be ready to put them in the pans. Now, your pans can be lightly greased. It's good to have them shallow so that the inside of the granola doesn't stay uncooked. But you want to bake them at 250 to 300 until it's lightly browned. You can also put it in your oven and at the very, very lowest and kind of just do it overnight. But since I'm not too sure if I can trust my oven just yet, I'm going to keep an eye on it and do it 30 minutes to an hour or however long it takes. What you want to do is you want to stir it occasionally to make sure that it's getting well browned evenly, and keep an eye on your oven temperature if there's any question. Okay, I'm going to get this onto pans, and then I'm going to call my son so that we can get this fired up. Smells really good. That molasses smells really good. For this old stove, to get to the pilots, I have to get under the top of it. There's a safety switch that we have to hold down in order to light the pilot. And there's one on each side. Okay, I think we should be good. We're gonna just keep an eye. I put thermometers in both sides of the ovens. Taken my first 2 pans out, and my oven was doing pretty good, and then this other one, this right one, started creeping up toward 25 degrees hotter, and then it was like 50 degrees hotter. So I really can't trust this oven. It's pretty easy to make your own granola at home. You can store it in an airtight container. I have like a big glass canister or my big half-gallon mason jars that I sometimes store it. And what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be adding dried dates and raisins, and I think that's all I'm adding this time, so that they can get mixed in my granola. And people like it that way because the raisins get really chewy when you mix them all in, and it just makes it really, really nice for eating. So until next time, let me know if you make granola, and until next time, stay safe, be well, and may God bless you. Time to tell the truth. Just like my mom's, it's good. I will enjoy every bite, and I hope that you enjoy every bite too.